Okay. I see the timer started on the tablet there and I didn't realize, but that's okay. So we're going to read from the first 19 verses from Proverbs 6 today. And you'll maybe feel like everything's a bit disconnected in this study, and we'll talk a little bit more after that, after I've read the passage. But we're gonna do this one, and then the next lesson I'm gonna do all of the rest of chapter 6 and all of chapter 7 in one. Okay, so I like to go through passages of the Bible a lot slower than that, but I see how it's all connected in the way that Proverbs is structured. It's going to be very helpful if we just do all of that in one. But I do believe that the rest of chapter 6 is connected to what we're going to study today, so it is a bit hard to link all of that together, but it's just the decisions we have to make when we choose what to speak from. So Proverbs chapter 6, verses 1 to 19. My son, if you have put up security for your neighbor, have given your pledge for a stranger, if you have snared in the words of your mouth, caught in the words of your mouth, then do this, my son, and save yourself. For you have come into the hand of your neighbor. Go, hasten and plead urgently with your neighbor. Give your eyes no sleep, and your eyelids no slumber. Save yourself like a gazelle from the hand of a hunter, like a bird from the hand of a fowler. Go to the ant, O sluggard, consider her ways and be wise. Without having any chief, officer, or ruler, she prepares her bread in summer and gathers her food in harvest. How long will you lie there, O sluggard? When will you arise from your sleep? A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come upon you like a robber, and want like an armed man. A worthless person, a wicked man, goes about with crooked speech, winks with his eyes, signals with his feet, points with his finger. With perverted heart devises evil, continually sowing discord. Therefore calamity will come upon him suddenly. In a moment he will be broken beyond healing. There are 6 things that the Lord hates, 7 that are an abomination to him: haughty eyes, a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that make haste to run to evil, a false witness who breathes out lies, and one who sows discord among brothers. Amen. So like I said, it does appear that everything we've read here so far, it's just a bunch of disconnected thoughts. Obviously there are kind of chunks where ideas stick together, but after we go from where one idea is stuck together, the other idea seems completely unrelated. Does that sound like what we just read? Yeah. So what I'm going to try and do today is sort of stick all of that together, because I do believe there's a reason that it's recorded for us like this. But also I might just be trying to force that, so do feel free to speak up at the discussion time if you think that I've tried to force a connection between these things where there isn't one. And yeah, if you think that I nailed it, then also tell me that, because that would encourage me as well. So yeah. So I do think there is a bit of consistency here, and I think the general idea, and this is kind of how I will title this, is that we are looking at securing our future through good Christian character. So securing our future through good Christian character. Now, that might just sound like a lot of words at first. It might sound like a lot of weird English words as well that you kind of understand, but you can't really, like, what does that actually mean? And I think that when I read it myself, and I'm the one that wrote it, so just bear with me a bit for that. But I didn't want to spend too much time going over each one of these little aspects of things here, because all of these ideas come up again in the book of Proverbs later on, and I wanted to save more of the meat of that for when we get to those individual statements. So again, if I nail that, that's great. If I don't, then do feel free to tell me. So the structure that we have here, we have things throughout the whole of chapter 6, including the part we didn't read. We have sort of 4 sections here. The first is about surety. Surety being when you agree to take a loan of someone, or you agree to, how would you say, to be like someone's deposit. You like give a credit card to someone and they spend everything in your name. That's what surety is. That's what these first verses are talking about. And then the transition is into laziness, which I don't think anyone needs an explanation of what laziness is. And then we move into deceitfulness, which again it's pretty simple to nail down what deceitfulness is. And then the part that we didn't read leads into adultery. So immediately we see those different ideas and we think, well, how can they all possibly be connected together? So hopefully if you stick with me, you'll see it. And if I do a bad job of it, then then you'll see that it doesn't stick together at all. Or I just did a bad job of trying to stick it together. So basically all of this is how we look to the future. If you see all these ideas, you've got surety, securing your future financially, laziness, doing work to secure your future financially. And it all concerns the entirety of our lives and how we plan forward about our futures. And that's what I want us to look at today. So the first thing that comes up in our passage is surety. And like I said at the start there, surety is when you're willing to take the financial hit for someone else's decisions. So if someone gives, if I give my credit card to Federico and say, right, you want to start a business, go ahead and start a business, put all that debt on my credit card, and I'll assume the payment for that. Good luck with that if you do want to do that though, Fedi, because I don't even own a credit card. For that reason. No, not for that reason. Another example might be that someone might take a loan from you, so they may need like 100 lei or something, or 1,000 lei in a moment, and you say, okay, well, here's 1,000 lei now, I'm not going to give you that, that's a loan, and I need it back, because if I don't get it back, then I'll be financially ruined. So that sort of thing. Or a promise of financial help. Well, if you want to start your business in a year from now, then I'm here to help you with that, and you've kind of bound yourself to that promise. So with this in mind, Solomon says in verse 1, "My son, if you have put up security for your neighbor, have given your pledge for a stranger." So we see a negative tone right from the beginning of this idea of surety. So we must ask ourselves at the start, is surety wrong? Is it wrong to promise a loan to someone? Is it wrong to say you want to help someone in the future? And I think we have to conclude the example is no. It's not wrong to do that, just that we have to be wise about how we go about it. And just as an example, one day any one of us here might have children, any one of you may have children, and you want to help that child grow a business. He has a great business idea and you want to help him build on that. So you make an investment, you send him to college, you assume the debt from the college, you then put the account in the business account in your personal account. You do all sorts of things. You loan to friends because they need help, or you absorb someone's debt, you agree to absorb someone's debt. So all these kinds of ideas about financial help, they can be okay. But it's not necessarily okay just because you think it's okay. You have to be wise, okay? But the example that's given to us in this passage is of one that has not gone out well. It's something that the person wants to get away from. And I think the reason we have to be wary of it is because it can just completely ruin our future lives. If we agree to absorb someone's debt or a future debt. I know a gentleman, a very good, wise, godly man. He's a missionary as well. And he wanted to send his daughter to university when she grew up, so she went to America. He put her debt for her student loan, which, as we know in America, is very expensive, and put that debt on his account with the agreement that once she finished university, she would then work and she would get a good job because it was a good degree, and she would then pay that back. Well, she got married. She met a great guy when she was in university, and her parents fully supported that. It was great. And she got married, and due to that, she couldn't take that job that she wanted, and her husband wasn't earning very much money. So what do you think happened to the debt? Well, now the missionary has to take care of the debt, and this was a number of years ago, and as far as I'm aware, he's still paying it. That's just as a little example to be wary, even when it involves our family members, when someone we really care about. Be wary. Don't jump straight into that. I'm not saying that man did a bad thing in doing that. I think he did a good thing. But when you make that kind of step and you make that kind of agreement, be ready for that kind of thing to happen as a result. Yes, and so here we have two categories of people. We have friends and strangers. So obviously friends are people that we can trust, but I think we all know from experience that friends can stab us in the back sometimes, unfortunately. And you have to be very sure about someone before you agree to... I can see the looks around the room. You all betrayed each other before or something? We know that, and obviously strangers, when we enter financial business plans or whatever, we're strangers, then that's always something with an extra level of security we need to put up there. So basically the idea is that you can end up in a very bad position because you made a financial agreement. And we end up this way because we've agreed to something, and if this is the case, then Solomon says in verses 2 and 3, if you are snared in the words of your mouth, caught in the words of your mouth, then do this, my son, and save yourself. For you have come into the hand of your neighbor. Go, hasten, and plead urgently with your neighbor. So that seems a bit strange at first, because the Bible is very consistent in telling us that we have to live up to what we've agreed to do, right? So why is Solomon now telling us to get out of something? So I think the reason is because there are cases, as we know, I think we've talked about this in Proverbs before, where something is very bad for us and we realize that down the line, and we have to seek our way out of it. And we do that by being polite about it and asking for permission. But sometimes we can't, and sometimes we're just stuck, and so we have to honor something, and that's why we have to be wise before we make any kind of decisions that affect our future. But if you're unable to sort out a financial problem where you've agreed to go into something with someone, then you have to plead for freedom. I think that's what Solomon's saying. He's telling us to plead for freedom from our obligations when our obligations begin to ruin our lives. Otherwise, our yes is a yes and our no is a no. And so that's why, again, I want to highlight this before doing anything financial in this life. And we're living in an age where it's very easy to make financial commitments. We must be very careful. We must be very wise before we make those decisions, before we make those investments. And he adds urgencies to this in verses 4 and 5. Give your eyes no sleep and your eyelids no slumber. Save yourself like a gazelle from the hand of the hunter, like a bird from the hand of a fowler. So if you're stuck in this situation and it's ruining your life, he's saying waste no time. Like, get it sorted. Get out of that as soon as you can, as godly, in a godly way as possible. And you may feel like you're letting friends down, and you may feel like your reputation could be ruined one day because of this. These things are going to tempt you to say, oh, I shouldn't do this. It might be ruining my life, but this other thing is more important to me. You've got to stop believing those lies. Life is precious. We have to uphold that preciousness of life before God as an honoring gift to him. And we can't do that if something exterior is ruining our lives because of a bad decision made in our youth or at a younger age. And so make haste and do as quickly as you can to not be slowed down by those things, and to get them out of your life wherever possible. Basically, don't waste time when it comes to getting out of financial commitments that are destructive. And so when Solomon writes about that, being quick to do something to get out of a bad situation, that brings his mind around to laziness. And he starts that in verse 6. Go to the ant, O sluggard, consider her ways, and be wise. So when an ant needs to do something, what does it do? It does it. Right? An ant just does what it has to do. And if it doesn't, what's going to happen? It'll die. It'll die of starvation. And I think, as one author pointed out, it's very humiliating for us to read this. Like, you great wise person, you think that you're all the way up here. Look at that ant that you could step on and not even realize it's there. Like, that's humbling. And he's saying, look at that ant as an example of how to live. And so when we think we're wise and we've made all these great decisions, I've made this investment, I'm such an intelligent, wise person. And then we start getting lax in our life, and we start being lazy and thinking, oh well, I've made enough money, I can relax a bit now, I don't have to worry. Solomon's telling us, look at that little tiny insignificant ant. Like, there could be dozens of ants in this very room right now. I hope not, but there could be, and none of us would know about it. They'd probably be in the kitchen, but that's how insignificant they are. That's how insignificant ants are. That they could be there and we don't know. That's not a hint like there's any ants in the cookies or anything, but so yeah, think about that next time you think that you've made all these smart decisions and you're wise, and you start getting lazy because you start getting reckless or whatever. Think, yeah, those ants are smarter than I am in this sense. That's what Solomon wants me to know. And so why do we have to consider her ways? And just by the way, as a little side note, does it say in Romanian her ways? Kalileye, yeah? Anyone got any idea as to why it says her? Yeah, it's feminine. I was waiting for someone to say something like, "Oh, woman empowerment movement" or something like that. But no, it's because in Hebrew the word for ant is naturally feminine. So I didn't know that before I studied. So that's just a little interesting piece of information for you. So the answer to our question as to why consider her ways is in verses 7 and 8. Without having any chief officer or ruler, she prepares her bread in summer and gathers her food in the harvest. So basically, nobody tells her to go and collect food. She does it by instinct. She needs to. She has to. If she doesn't do it, she dies. And she knows to store it in order to live as well. It's not just like I'm going to take what I need right now. She makes provision for the future. And nobody tells her that she has to do that. And she just does it. And so that's the idea. If anyone here is tempted with laziness, go and think about that ant. Think about the fact that ants just go and do what they need to do, and if they don't do it, they die. And it's the same with us. Like realistically, most of us can't live our lives without work. We have to work, and if we don't work, we die because we don't have enough money for food. And yeah, sure, there's little branches and aspects that we can look at that where, oh, well, someone has money and they're born into a rich family. But just as a general note, we all have to work, and none of us were born into rich families. I know that for sure. Unless Anna Marie is hiding some secret royalty behind her.
She's one of us.
She's one of us. That's comforting to me. So that's how we should be with surety. We should just be working hard, working in the moment, working for our lives, and if there's a bad situation, we should seek to get out of it quickly. Like if an ant sees rain coming, well, the ant runs to get the food and bring it back to the hive, I guess we call it, the nest, whatever they call their little, I don't know what they call them, but don't tarry in laziness is basically what Solomon says. And so furthermore, he says in verses 9 to 11, how long will you lie there, O sluggard? When will you arise from your sleep? A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come upon you like a robber, and want like an armed man. So just as a personal illustration of that, around the pandemic time with all the isolation, I struggled a lot with my sleep patterns, and we probably all did because none of us had anything to do. We all had the freedom to not go to work during that time, and I think that really brought out the laziness that's in all of our hearts, that we just abandoned all our patterns of life wherever possible. And though we didn't necessarily want it, it still brought that laziness from us to say, oh, well, you know what, I can wake up 5 minutes before going to sign into work or sign into my college course, and yeah, you're all smiling because you all did it, as did I. So I struggled, and then after the pandemic, I also struggled to get my sleep pattern back on track when everything started going to normal, back to normal, as in after the first isolation period. And one of the things that I did as I was reading this, I was actually reading a later verse in Proverbs that says better to take a knife to your throat and cut your throat than to be lazy, because laziness will kill you in the end. Because you have no money, and no money means no work, no food. And I wrote that on my hand, and sorry, I got the verses a little bit wrong there, but I did write this verse there, and the other verse was in reference to something else. I made that verse my alarm clock. So every morning when I would wake up and I'd be tempted to hit the snooze button, I'd be hearing, I'd hear a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest. And that's exactly what we do, right? When we hit the snooze button, we hear our alarm and go, and when we lie back over, right? Yeah. Again, everyone's laughing because we've all done it. Simon believes he doesn't do it. It's okay if you don't do it, don't worry. So it's somewhat of a satirical picture here that we're seeing, but it theoretically represents all of us. And deep down in our hearts, we all know that we have our moments of laziness where that snooze button comes. And yeah, let me just ask you that, guys. Who's ever pressed the snooze button? Raise your hands. Yeah. Today. Oh, okay, there you go. See. Who has ever missed a day of work for laziness, or been late to work because they stayed in bed too late? Yeah, I have, or to college or whatever. Yeah, we've all been late because we puts...
Technical problems.
Sorry, what problem?
The excuse was technical issues.
Technical issues, yeah. Yeah, the bus was late. It wasn't my fault. The trams are so unreliable in the city. Yeah. Well, this is what Solomon's trying to tell us, is that this poverty, if we keep being late for work because we keep hitting the snooze button, then what's going to happen? We're not going to have a job eventually because we'll get fired, and if we get fired, then we'll have poverty. It'll come upon us like a thief, and it'll rob us of everything we have. And he also says armed man here, so the impression there is that your life is in danger, and so it will ruin us, laziness. So basically, keep sleeping, stop working, and you'll have nothing left because of your laziness. So then, linking this to another idea, Solomon then makes an idea showing us that such a person is worthless in his eyes as a hard worker. Such a person is worthless and wicked, and that's what he says in verse 12. A worthless person, a wicked man, goes about with crooked speech. And so this person in our analogy here, he gave in to surety, he made the wrong mistakes, and he wasn't quick to get himself out of it because he was lazy, and now he's worthless because he's got nothing in life. He's lost everything because of his laziness to get out of that situation. He's worthless because he doesn't contribute anything to his own life, and he's wicked because eventually he has to start manipulating people to get what he wants. If he needs money, so he'll go and beg on the street and pretend that he can't work or whatever. We're living here, we know what that's like, to be sitting at a nice restaurant and then suddenly someone comes and asks you for money, and they're all manipulative about it, like, oh, I don't have any money, or I just lost my job, or my child needs to be fed, and all these kinds of manipulative tactics that they use, this deception, this worthlessness. Well, such a person is as verse 13 and 14 say. They wink with their eyes, and they signal with their feet, they point with their fingers. With a perverted heart, they devise evil, continually sowing discord. So basically everything in that person is dedicated towards deception to get what they want, to get money, to get fame, to get power, whatever. And verse 15, it shows what will happen to them eventually. Therefore calamity will suddenly come upon them. In a moment he will be broken beyond healing. And that happens to every single person in that situation eventually. They all fall, they all get broken. There's massive, we don't see it very much, but we know that the gypsies have their own little fights amongst themselves where, one of them gets a little bit more money from begging than the other in one day, and they start fighting each other for it. At least that's how I understand things work. You live that kind of life, destruction and calamity will come upon you eventually. It will come on you because, you're fighting the same people that are fighting the same worthless fight. And, So, and even if that calamity doesn't come upon such a person in this life, then they're going to die in that worthlessness, and nothing can save them from that. Nothing can save them from death, and we all know what happens to people that die after living a worthless life. So thinking about this wickedness, Solomon goes on to talk more about that wicked person and to talk about how God hates what they do. And I know that's a harsh word to hear that God hates such a thing, but it's only harsh to us because we've become so accustomed to fluffy teaching on the love of God. And that's wonderful. The love of God is a very important and brilliant thing that we need to focus on, but it's not something that is subordinate to his justice. It's not something that's subordinate to his wrath. We have to have all of this picture at the same time. So we shouldn't be shocked when we read that God hates something, because the Bible continually tells us that God hates sin. Sin is a bad thing, and God hates what's bad. So, verse 16 begins that by telling us there are 6 things that the Lord hates, 7 that are an abomination to him. So some of you might read that and think, well, what's with this 6 and 7 thing, right? Has anyone ever worked that out? Well, don't look at me to help you because I have no idea either. I read some good information about it in commentaries, and the best answer I got to it is that it's a kind of Hebrew way of writing. It's a way of putting out a bunch of points and then to emphasize the last point. So if there's a 6 of this bad thing, then the 7th thing is the worst thing. That's the idea that I think stands out the most. I think it's more just a sort of prosaic way that doesn't really relate to us in our culture. We don't really do that. We just sort of say what needs to be said. Whereas the Hebrews, the Jews, they kind of circle around an idea a bit more. And I think you can see that in most of the Old Testament writings, especially where ideas just keep getting repeated over and over again. And even in some passages, the same passage is written again twice in the same book of Scripture. And that's just the Hebrew way of doing things. There are reasons for that. They transmitted a lot of the Bible through speech, and so they had to say things over and over again to memorize it, to make sure that they remembered things, so it does make sense. But part of that obviously developed in their culture, and so that's what they are. So I don't think there's anything mystical or special behind the way that this is written. It's just a way of writing. So sorry if that's disappointing to anyone. So what does God hate, and what is an abomination to him? Verses 17 to 19 tell: haughty eyes, a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that make haste to run to evil, a false witness who breathes out lies, and one who sows discord among brothers. So basically, we can sum all of that up with dishonesty, deception, and selfishness. God hates all of that. And I don't think we need to dissect every word there. I think it's pretty clear the generality of this. At least I hope so. If not, we can go into more details about that in the discussion time. But basically, God hates those who live for themselves, who don't live for him. They live to boost their own ego. They live to boost their own status in the world, boost their own financial situation, and don't give him all the glory. Don't give him from their wealth. They just constantly trying to pull other people down so they can stand up. And obviously, when we remember that we exist to glorify God, then we should be doing none of that. We should be doing everything we can to lift other people up so that God can be lifted up in his glory. And God hates when we don't do that. That's what all of our verses say, but we're not at the end of this yet. Because at the very beginning, I mentioned that we're talking about future security here today. And I wanted to just go through all the verses, and then I want to just now sort of do a bit more of a gluing session here to glue it all up together a bit so that we can see how that affects our Christian character. But just as a reminder, we're talking about future security here. So verses 1 to 5, they showed that financial security is by not being bound to surety. So if you're making investments and those investments are lost one day and you lose all your money through your investments, then you've not made a good choice and you've been bound to the surety, which has ruined you. Verses 6 to 11, they show that work is necessary, and without it there is no way to live. And so that's actually just another little interesting thing. If you're trying to get rich by doing this, like I'm going to put this investment in here, or I'm going to trust this money to this friend who's going to start up his business, and then I'm going to benefit from his business and I don't have to work, that kind of lazy attitude. We've seen here that that's no way to live. And so the idea is that Solomon wants us to see that hard work is a general way of life. It's a good thing. And even the Bible says, he who does not work shall not eat, because working is a good thing. We're created to do that. And so I would say personally it's less wise to make investments, financial investments. I'm not saying it's wrong for anyone that wants to make a financial investment in a business, but I just believe in the day-to-day 9-to-5 grind of work more than that personally. And I just believe it's better to have an honest job, which all of you do, which isn't a problem. But just to highlight that we are created to work. It's a good thing. And that's because without work, what is our lives? It's meaningless, right? Now, someone might turn around to me and say, but surely life without Christ is what entails meaningless. And absolutely, that's 100% the truth. But if we are in Christ, then we'll realize the value of work, because we'll want to be building up his kingdom, which means earning money to give to his ministry. And it also means working in that kingdom work directly as well, wherever he would call us. So if we are in Christ, we will also realize the value of important work and giving to his kingdom. And then verses 12 to 15, that talks about deception. So you've got the guy that ruined himself through surety, and then he became lazy because he didn't get out of that surety. And now in order to get money, because his reputation or his financial situation is gone, he's turned to deception to get money. And that's why I really struggle with the idea of a Christian salesman. I just think about, I'm not saying anything's wrong here. I can't see how a Christian could be a salesman, because you think about how how many manipulation tactics you have to employ to get someone to buy something that they don't need, and how that can be honest. I can't see it personally. Yeah, so that's also just another little highlight. We have to be careful as well, because those little ideas of, oh, well, I could make a little bit of money, I could start this pyramid scheme or something, and I could give a little bit of money into that. Yeah, we're all laughing, but we all know people that have done it. And you give into that pyramid scheme and you make an investment, and then you lose all of that. But in order to regain from that, you have to manipulate other people into joining your investment scheme, and you have to trick them. It just becomes this whole thing. And so wherever it comes to like money and loaning to people, and there's interest rates and stuff, that's a whole other world to me. It's something I'm glad I never took an interest in. I'm glad it's something I don't have to worry about. I don't have to sell anything to anyone, so I'm happy in my life not doing that. And props to anyone that's able to do that and maintain integrity. I don't know how they do it. I'm not sure it's possible, but props to anyone who is able to do that. Surety leading to laziness, leading to deception and worthlessness. And we have to be careful not to become this and become like what we saw in verses 16 to 19, which would lead us to all sorts of sins, which are then highlighted in adultery, which is the rest of the passage from verse 20 all the way through to the end of chapter 7. So that progression is clear. You start off with that surety, and then you end up with just this entire life of sin because you made mistakes and you weren't quick to get yourself out of the mistakes. It's all linked, hopefully, as far as I can see, and hopefully you can see. So what do we do? What's all of this for? Why is Solomon telling us all of this? Well, instead of thinking about money all the time, I'm thinking about all the clever little investments we can make and all the ideas we can manipulate and work out to make more money. Surely it's better for us to just focus on building a good Christian character. I think that's something that's highlighted in the New Testament when we read Paul's letter to Timothy, or we read Peter's letter, I think his first letter. He's addressing women at one point. He says, don't be worried about your external appearance, but focus on the internal godliness which you can have. And I think that applies to all of us, because we live in such a vain age. And the idea is that we waste all of our time focusing on, like, how can we make more money? How can I make myself look better? How can I, be fit, whatever. We invest all our time, our money and efforts in these things. And meanwhile, when we should be using those resources to build on our Christian character. That's all falling apart. So we're not only ruining our future by wasting all of our time and messing around with those things, but we're also not building the Christian character that God expects us to build. And so it has that dual-edged sword which just cuts right through us and destroys us. So all of what we've seen is true of people with bad character. They're unwise, they're lazy, they're deceptive, they're evil. And we are called to be the complete opposite of those people. We're called to be rooted in Christ and to have the fruit of Christ in our lives as a result of being rooted in him. And so be careful where you invest your money, be careful where you invest your time, be careful the kind of people you spend time around with, be careful with everything you do. You could be ruining your future very easily. And just to emphasize the money idea again, I meant to look it up, I didn't find time, but we watched a movie once, Emma and I, and this guy he didn't have much money, but he managed to get some money together to invest in this guy's business, and the asking price was way higher than what he had, but he let him in anyway because he was a family friend. And then he put that money into the business, and then the business collapsed. And the guy says, well, you need to give me my money back. And he said, that's not how this works. You've invested this money, and you can take out this less amount now, because that's what your money is worth now. And you will not receive everything that you paid into this, and you will not receive any benefits. But otherwise, you just lose it. And so, you don't have any idea what film that was, no? Does anyone have any? That could be anything, I suppose. But I remember they were playing tennis while discussing the business deal. That's about all I remember. The guy lived in a big mansion. I think the guy who gave the money had long hair. I don't remember. Yeah. So I can't guarantee that's a good movie if there's any swearing or anything in it. I'm sorry if I recommend that. But Yeah, so that's just the idea, is that you can make that kind of investment and then the company becomes completely worthless and you lose money rather than gaining. So everything that, and sure, you might say, well, okay, I put £10 into this, 10 lei into this, and the worst that can happen is I lose 10 lei, but you still lost 10 lei, right? So that's not a good thing. So instead, weigh things in the balance and ask what could be wrong with your investments before you go and do them. Before you agree to give your friend a loan, think, is he going to pay this back? If he doesn't, can I afford to take that loss? Before you go and invest in a company so that you can get a better return one day, think what could go wrong. Like people used to invest in paper, for example. Like paper, everyone's always going to need paper, books, brochures, whatever. Well, we're living in a world minus my living room that doesn't use paper anymore. So anything can go wrong. If it can go wrong, it might go wrong, right? So keep that in mind as you make your investments. And clearly, find blessing in work. I know work is a drag sometimes, working 9 to 5. Like I know that myself, and we kind of have this attitude that says, "Oh, I hate that. It defines my existence, and I hate it." But it's a good thing. The scriptures say it's a good thing, and it doesn't mean that the job itself is a pleasant thing. But the fact that we get to work, and the fact that God provides for us through the fact that we work, that is a blessed thing that we should learn to rejoice in. So next time you're going to work and you think, "Oh, I hate this so much, I wish I wasn't here," then just remember that this is God's provision for you. Don't cry out against it. Yes, circumstances might not be brilliant, and that's not wrong to find another job if that's the case, but just remember, God's put you here for a reason, and that reason is to provide for you, and rejoice in that. And that's just important to remember, because from Eden we've been called to work. Even in paradise, Adam and Eve were called to work. So it's a good thing, not something we should be constantly trying to get away from. And we should work hard, and we'll see more of that as we go through the later chapters of Proverbs. And this prevents us from becoming worthless vegetables, which none of us want to be. So just as a final kind of concluding idea, wherever you have spare time, resources, whether it be time, space in your apartment, finances that you can use to invest in Christ's ministry in this earth until kingdom come, do that. Find good things for your hands to do. Find good things for your resources to do. We don't all have the same gifts. Not all of you are called to go out onto the streets with me and do evangelism. That's fine, but some of you might be really great at doing pastoral counseling with people. Find those people in your church that they're really struggling with their spiritual lives, and say, "Hey, I really want to take you to a coffee and help you out with this." And I think a great testimony to all of you that are here right now. Any single one of you could have just said, "I'm not going to come tonight. I'm not going to invest in my spiritual life right now. I'm going to be lazy. I'm going to stay at home. I'm going to watch Netflix." And then, the study's going to be online anyway tomorrow, so we could just do that.
Are you reading minds?
No, I just know how it is, because the same thoughts that go through your heads go through my head every time I have to go to something. I'm telling you my mind. But yeah, that's just a testimony to you guys' productivity. You're invested in your spiritual lives, and you're coming to a Bible study. So we hear you guys. So yeah, just be encouraged by that. If this has been a bit of a hard hammer to you on the laziness subject, like, you are investing in your spiritual lives by the fact that you're here right now. So be encouraged there. So we know what happens to such a worthless person, and all those things that are covered at the end of the passage there. So basically, if we make bad decisions, then this is the pit that we could all fall into. If, however, we live for wisdom, investing in developing a godly character and growing up in wisdom, then the path of life will be opened up before us. And the path was opened by Christ. He embodies perfect Christian character, and if we follow him, then we'll live a Christian life and develop good Christian character. So he was wise in all of his words and actions. He worked hard, and he spoke directly rather than deceptively. He didn't try and manipulate people to get what he wanted. Like, "Oh, hey, could you do this for me? And, because I love you so much, you can do this for me," stuff like that. No, he was direct. He said, "Right, this is what you have to do to get to heaven, and I'm telling you this because I love you." There's a difference there. And so because it's like him that we want to be, we have to learn from him. We have to learn from this passage especially to follow him. And so doing that makes us more like him. Amen.